We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. Laura Monroe gripped the steering wheel of her sleek black Audi as she sped down the highway, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips. The city lights of Chicago blurred behind her as she drove home to her husband, Daniel, and their teenage daughter, Claire. The echoes of laughter, stolen kisses, and whispered promises from earlier that night still lingered in her mind. Caleb, 10 years younger, irresistibly charming, and dangerously exhilarating, had awakened something in her that she hadn't felt in years. The thrill of stolen moments, the rush of secrecy, the intoxicating allure of feeling desired. It was a high she never wanted to come down from. Yet, as she turned onto their suburban street, something in her gut twisted. Daniel's truck was missing. That was odd. He was always home by now. Her pulse quickened, but she shook it off. He was probably out running errands or picking up Claire. Still, an unexplainable unease crawled up her spine. She parked in the driveway and stepped inside, the house eerily silent. No warm greeting, no familiar scent of home-cooked dinner. The absence felt heavy, unsettling. Lauren sighed, tossing her keys onto the counter before grabbing her phone. Turned off for the entire evening, a habit she had developed to fully indulge in her affairs. When she powered it on, the screen flooded with missed calls and unread messages. And then, a single message from Daniel. Hope you enjoyed your dinner. I know I did. Check your email. Welcome to hell. A cold wave of fear crashed over her. Hands trembling, she tapped open her email, and, as the video loaded, the blood drained from her face. Her secret was no longer secret. Daniel knew everything, and he wasn't just leaving. He was about to ruin her life. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel had been planning the ultimate anniversary surprise for Lauren. A decade of marriage, years of loyalty, a lifetime of devotion. He wanted to make it special. He had arranged for a surprise dinner in a lavish restaurant, planned for a diamond necklace to be delivered to her at the table. But then, a phone call changed everything. Lauren's best friend had let something slip, a seemingly harmless comment about how Lauren's business trips were keeping her too busy for Daniel. And then, the way she quickly changed the subject. Something was off. The suspicion was like a cancer, spreading fast. Daniel had never doubted Lauren before, but something gnawed at him. And so, he did something he never thought he would. He hired a private investigator. The truth shattered him. His wife, the woman he had built a life with, was not just cheating on him. She had been for 2 years. With multiple men. Daniel didn't confront her right away. No, that was too easy. Too merciful. Instead, he crafted a plan. A slow, calculated, cruel plan. Lauren was about to learn that she hadn't just betrayed her husband. She had awakened a monster. Lauren's fingers clutched the phone as she watched the video in horror. It was a recording of her dinner with Caleb. The audio was crystal clear. Husbands give us jewelry. Lovers give us pleasure. Her own voice purred across the speaker. She felt sick. The camera zoomed out, revealing her entire family. Daniel, Claire, her parents, his parents, her friends, all gathered in the living room, watching her betrayal unfold in real time. The pain on Daniel's face, the devastation in Claire's eyes. A sob caught her throat. Then the camera zoomed in again, to Daniel, standing up, turning off the television, and walking out the door. And now he was gone, vanished from her life. And she had no idea what he was planning next. Lauren sat in the dimly lit kitchen, her pulse a chaotic drum against her ribs. The coffee in her mug had gone cold, untouched. She had replayed the video 100 times, each viewing cutting deeper in her like a dull blade, twisting inside her chest. She had lost everything in a single night. Her husband, her daughter, her family's respect. The only thing she had left was the growing dread that this was only the beginning. Her phone vibrated against the marble countertop, making her jump. Claire. For a moment, hope flickered in her. Maybe, just maybe, her daughter wanted to talk. Maybe she would give her a chance to explain, to make things right. She hesitated before answering, voice trembling. Claire. The silence on the other end was suffocating. Then, a single sentence came through, her daughter's voice cold and detached. I never want to see you again. The line went dead. Lauren let out a breath, her chest tightening, her throat burning with unshed tears. She wanted to scream, to break something, to undo everything. But there was no undoing this. Her perfect world had shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. And Daniel had made sure she felt every single one cutting into her. She hadn't heard from Daniel in 2 weeks. After that night, he had disappeared. No calls, no texts, no messages. It was as if he had never existed in her life. Her lawyer, a stoic man with tired eyes, had called her in for a meeting. She expected divorce papers, maybe a discussion about custody. Instead, she walked into his office to find her financial statements laid out before her like a crime scene. The words blurred together, but the truth was undeniable. Daniel had emptied their joint accounts. The savings were gone. The investments liquidated. The house sold. She sucked in a sharp breath. He can't do this. This was my house too. My money. Her lawyer gave her a grim look. Technically no. The deed was only in his name. Lauren felt suffocated. She had spent years in that house. She had built a life there. And now, Daniel had erased her. She swallowed, voice hoarse. What about Claire? Custody. Daniel has full custody. Given the evidence, it's unlikely any judge would rule in your favor. Her stomach dropped. Daniel hadn't just left her. He had made sure she had no way back. Desperate, she called Caleb. He didn't pick up. She called again, and again, and again. Finally, on the 5th try, he answered. Lauren. His voice was clipped, irritated. What do you want? Her throat went dry. She hadn't expected warmth, but she had expected something. She hated how weak she sounded. I just wanted to talk. Silence. Then a sigh. Look, whatever you had going on with your husband, that's your problem. I didn't sign up for this mess. Lauren's hands trembled. Caleb, please, I need you to stop calling me. He cut her off. We had fun, Lauren. That's it. Don't make this something it's not. Her breath hitched. Her pulse roared in her ears. Fun. That was all she had been to him. A diversion. An amusement. Her fingers clenched around the phone. But he had already hung up. The weight of it hit her all at once. She had destroyed her life for him, and he didn't even care. The nightmare wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. She walked into work the next morning, trying to hold her head high. If she could just make it through the day, if she could bury herself in work, maybe she wouldn't fall apart completely. But as soon as she stepped through the office doors, she knew something was wrong. The stares, the whispers, the way conversations stopped when she walked past. Her heart pounded. Then she saw her assistant, her face pale, eyes wide with something close to pity. Lauren. Before she could finish, the intercom buzzed. Lauren Monroe, please report to the boardroom immediately. Dread slithered through her veins. She stepped inside, expecting a meeting. Instead, she found Daniel sitting at the head of the table. Calm, cold, unshakable. A thick folder lay open before him, filled with documents she couldn't see. The CEO stood beside him, lips pressed into a thin line. Lauren. His voice was heavy. Please have a seat. Her legs felt like lead as she sank into the chair. Daniel's gaze never left hers. And then the words that would end everything. Lauren, effective immediately. You're being terminated. She blinked. What? The CEO shifted uncomfortably. Given the circumstances, we've decided that it's best for you to step down. Circumstances. Lauren's stomach twisted. Daniel, her voice cracked. You did this. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. You did this, he said smoothly. I'm just finishing what you started. She gripped the table. You can't fire me. Oh, Daniel's voice was ice. I can. Her chest tightened. I built this company. And now you're watching it slip through your fingers, he replied coolly. Like everything else in your life. Lauren's nails dug into her palms. Daniel, please. He leaned forward, his voice low. You weren't just unfaithful to me, he murmured. You were disloyal. And now you get to see what it feels like. She couldn't breathe. Daniel wasn't just walking away. He was dismantling her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. Lauren sat motionless in her darkened apartment, her body hunched over the kitchen table as the weight of her shattered world bore down on her like an unforgiving storm. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating her, swallowing her whole. She had once lived in a luxurious home, with a husband who adored her, and a daughter who admired her. Now, she was confined to this pathetic, soulless space, the walls whispering her sins back at her, reminding her of how far she had fallen. She hadn't spoken to Claire in weeks. Daniel had cut her off completely. Her phone, once filled with endless notifications from colleagues, friends, and family, was silent. The buzzing, the texts, the calls gone. The very people who once envied her now looked at her, as if she were something foul, something contaminated. The whispers followed her everywhere. Did you hear about her? God, how humiliating. I can't imagine. She had a perfect life, and she just threw it away. Lauren gritted her teeth, her hands curling into fists. She had never been powerless before. She had controlled everything. Her life, her image, even the men she entertained on the side. Now, Daniel controlled it all. She had grossly underestimated him. She thought he would break down, would beg for an explanation, would plead for her to stay. Instead, he had annihilated her, and he had done it so mercilessly that she almost didn't recognize the man he had become. Her hands trembled as she dialed another number. Sue. She had always been her closest friend, the one she could count on. It rang. Once. Twice. A third time. Then click. Lauren. Sue's voice was cold, distant. Lauren swallowed hard, her throat dry. Sue, I need to talk to you. A pause. Then a quiet scoff. You have some nerve calling me. Lauren's stomach twisted. Please. I don't have anyone else. You don't have anyone because you burned everything to the ground, Sue snapped. You lied to me for years. You used me as a cover. And for what? A couple of nights with some younger guy? Was it worth it? Lauren winced. Was it? She had once thought so. Now, she wasn't sure anymore. Sue, I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. Sue laughed bitterly. You didn't mean to hurt me? What about Daniel? What about Claire? What about the people who had to sit in that room and watch you throw your marriage in his face? Lauren's lips parted, but she had no excuse. You lost everything, Lauren. Sue continued, her voice sharp. And you deserved it. The line went dead. Lauren let out a choked breath, the reality of her situation sinking even deeper. There was no one left. She had lost her friends, her family, her job, and now, even Caleb, the very man she had risked everything for, was nowhere to be found. She searched for him, desperate to reclaim at least one shred of what she had before. But Caleb had moved on effortlessly. She found him in an upscale restaurant, laughing with another woman, a younger, prettier version of herself. She was draped over him, her manicured fingers tracing the line of his jaw, her eyes filled with adoration. The same look Lauren once gave him. It was like watching a reflection of her own past, except now, she was on the outside, looking in. Lauren's stomach twisted with rage. She stormed up to their table, her nails digging into her palms. Caleb, she hissed. He barely spared her a glance. Lauren, he said, voice indifferent. What do you want? Her blood boiled. I want to talk. Caleb sighed, then turned fully to face her, his expression unreadable. Look, whatever this is, it's done. You and I, we were never serious. You knew that. I don't owe you anything. Lauren felt like she had been slapped. She had sacrificed everything for him, and he hadn't even blinked. The woman beside him smirked. Lauren Monroe, right? The woman who got publicly humiliated by her own husband. Lauren's stomach dropped. Even strangers knew. You should probably go, Caleb added, his voice lacking any trace of emotion. This is getting embarrassing. Embarrassing. Lauren felt something snap inside her. She had spent her entire life crafting an image, making sure she was untouchable, respected, feared. Now, she was a joke, and Daniel had orchestrated it all. Her husband, the man she had thought was weak, had outmaneuvered her in every way possible. She was jobless, broke, and now officially discarded by the very man she had thrown it all away for. And for the first time in her life, she was truly, utterly alone. Meanwhile, Daniel was thriving. He had thrown himself into his business, expanding it tenfold. His name was now synonymous with success, his face appearing in business magazines, his net worth skyrocketing. While Lauren struggled to pay rent, Daniel was building an empire. And Claire adored him, now more than ever. The bond between father and daughter had strengthened, and every time Lauren tried to reach out, she was met with silence. Daniel wasn't just moving on. He was erasing her. And the worst part, he had never looked happier. Lauren's world had become a silent prison, not the kind with iron bars, but one built from the cold weight of her own failures. She had once thrived on attention, basked in admiration, knowing she could turn heads with nothing more than a sharp smile. But now, people avoided her. The few who did acknowledge her did so with nothing but pity or thinly veiled amusement. She had become a living cautionary tale. The woman who had it all. The woman who threw it away. The woman who could never get it back. She had spent years crafting a perfect life. A husband who adored her. A daughter who respected her. A social circle that envied her. Now, it had all turned to dust. She had no job, no friends, no purpose. But worst of all, she had no control. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the one pulling the strings. She was the one being strung along, helplessly watching as her life continued to crumble around her. And the worst part, Daniel wasn't just ignoring her. He was thriving without her. Everywhere she turned, his name was etched in success. He had expanded his business, opened new ventures, grown his wealth beyond what they had ever dreamed of together. And she was forced to watch from the outside, unable to touch any part of the life she once ruled. Every time she tried to reach out, every attempt to beg for forgiveness, to find some form of closure, she was met with the same response. Nothing. It was as if she no longer existed. The only thing that hurt more than Daniel's revenge was Claire's silence. Lauren had tried calling, tried texting, tried waiting outside Claire's school just for a glimpse of her daughter. But Claire never answered. When Lauren showed up at one of her volleyball games, sitting quietly in the back, hoping to catch even a glance, her heart had leapt when Claire finally turned to look at her. For a fleeting second, Lauren had thought, maybe, just maybe, her daughter was ready to listen. Instead, Claire had simply stared, her expression unreadable, before turning away, as if Lauren were nothing more than a stranger. The rejection had been sharp, clean, merciless. Lauren had stumbled out of the gym, choking back the humiliation, the raw grief curling inside her like a sickness. She had destroyed the one bond that should have been unbreakable, and Daniel had made sure she felt it. Weeks passed, then months. Lauren's savings vanished quicker than she expected. She had always thought of herself as resourceful, someone who could always land on her feet. But no one wanted to hire her. She was too tainted. Her past sins clung to her like a stench she couldn't wash off. Every interview ended the same way. Polite smiles, forced apologies, a quiet dismissal. It wasn't just Daniel. The world itself had turned against her. And then came the moment that broke her completely. Lauren had been walking home from grocery store. Nothing glamorous, just cheap canned food. The only thing she could afford these days, when she spotted a familiar truck pulling up to a restaurant. Daniel's truck. Lauren froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her closer, her pulse roaring in her ears. And then she saw him, laughing, smiling, and beside him, a woman. Lauren's breath caught painfully in her throat. She wasn't just any woman. She was young, stunning, poised. Everything Lauren had once been. Daniel opened the restaurant door for her, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. It was effortless, natural, as if he had done 100 times before. Lauren stood frozen, unable to look away. It wasn't just a date. It was a replacement. Daniel wasn't just moving on. He was rewriting his life. And Lauren was no longer a part of the story. Daniel hadn't planned on dating again. For the longest time, the rage had consumed him. The betrayal, the humiliation, the years wasted on a woman who had never deserved him. But over time, something had changed. He had changed. He had spent so many years living for Lauren, putting her first, bending over backward to make her happy, to be the husband she wanted. And for what? To be thrown away like an afterthought? Not anymore. The new Daniel was ruthless, strategic, powerful, and he no longer made decisions with his heart, which is why when he saw Lauren standing across the street that night, staring at him like a ghost, he didn't flinch. He simply smirked and walked inside with his date, leaving Lauren alone in the cold. Lauren couldn't breathe. Daniel had seen her, and he didn't even care. The man who had once worshipped her, adored her, chased after her when she so much as looked upset, had walked away without a second glance. That night, she sat in her apartment and drank herself numb. She had lost him completely. She had lost everything. and there was nothing she could do to fix it. But the final blow was still coming. And when it did, it would be worse than anything she had ever imagined. Lauren sat on her tattered couch, the dim glow of the television casting flickering shadows on the walls. She wasn't even watching the screen. Her mind had long since wandered into the endless abyss of her regrets. She had spent months suffocating in her own misery, haunted by the wreckage of her past. But nothing, not the job rejections, not Claire's silence, not the nights spent staring at her phone hoping for an ounce of forgiveness, prepared her for what she saw next. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through her phone, a habit she had developed to torture herself. She wasn't expecting anything good, but what she saw, it shattered her. Claire's Instagram story. A picture, Daniel and his new fiancée standing together, his arm wrapped around her waist. Claire stood between them, smiling like she never had before. Above the image, a caption in soft cursive. The happiest family ever. Can't wait for the wedding. Lauren's breath hitched. Wedding. The word sent a sharp dagger into her chest. She stared at the screen, hoping, praying, that she had misread it. But no, Daniel was getting married, and the person who had announced it, her own daughter. Her hand shook as she clicked on the comments. People congratulating him. Friends swooning over how beautiful his fiancée was. Business partners admiring his resilience, his ability to rebuild. And then, one comment that felt like a gunshot to the heart. So happy for you, Daniel. You deserve a real wife this time. The likes on that comment climbed by the second. Lauren's vision blurred, the words distorting on the screen. Not a single person was questioning why Daniel had moved on. Not a single person was on her side. She had been erased, like she had never even mattered. Lauren couldn't stop staring at the photo. Her daughter, her own flesh and blood, was standing happily beside the woman who was about to replace her. That was her spot, her family. Her heart thundered in her chest, a mixture of rage, sorrow, and sheer disbelief. She had been Daniel's wife for years, and now, within the blink of an eye, she was nothing but a forgotten mistake. The worst part, Daniel looked happy, not the forced, exhausted happiness she had seen in him during the last years of their marriage, but a genuine peace, a contentment that he had never displayed when he was with her. Had she really been that much of a burden to him? Had he really been so miserable in their marriage that letting her go had given him new life? The thought made her stomach churn. The final insult was knowing that Claire had accepted this woman so easily. That should have been impossible. She was Claire's mother. She should have been irreplaceable. And yet, here they were. A new family, a new future, a new life, without her. Lauren clenched her jaw, her nails digging into her palms. She had lost them. For good. The day of Daniel's wedding arrived like a death sentence. Lauren hadn't been invited. Of course, she hadn't. Daniel had made sure of it. But that didn't mean she wasn't going to see it. She had kept tabs, desperate for any information, anything to make sense of how she had fallen so far. And when she found the livestream link, posted by one of Daniel's colleagues, she hesitated only for a moment before clicking it. The screen opened. The wedding venue was breathtaking. An elegant outdoor setting overlooking a pristine lake, golden light filtering through the trees. Daniel stood at the altar, dressed in a sharp black suit, his expression calm, strong, unshakable. And then, the camera panned to her, Daniel's bride. She was stunning, elegant, poised, glowing with joy. She walked down the aisle with ease, grace, and the kind of beauty Lauren had once prided herself on possessing. Lauren's breath caught in her throat as she watched Daniel's face soften with admiration. He looked at this woman the way he had never looked at her. She had once been his everything, and now she was nothing. Her eyes burned, but she refused to look away. She watched as Daniel took his new wife's hands, as they exchanged vows, as the guests clapped, as Claire hugged her father, whispering something into his ear. And then, the final, soul-crushing moment. Claire leaned into Daniel's new wife and whispered, "I love you, Mom." Lauren's chest caved in. Her vision went dark at the edges. She couldn't breathe. Claire had just called another woman her mother. And with those 3 words, Lauren finally understood. There was no coming back from this. She hadn't just lost Daniel. She had lost everything. Daniel had taken his revenge. And he had won. Days turned into weeks. The world moved on without her. Daniel never reached out. Claire never called. The wedding became the final chapter in a book she was no longer a part of. Lauren had once been the most powerful woman in her world. Now, she was nothing but a ghost. Daniel hadn't needed to destroy her physically. He had done something much worse. He had made her irrelevant.